didn't have all this technology to work with. They relied more on the individual Svengali with his magic wand to mesmerize his followers, convince them they were building a better Stonehenge together, when really they're just dancing around like fucking chickens, so terrified the fox is going to get in the hen house. If you want to keep your chickens cooped up, not realizing the fox is already in the fucking hen house, dressed up as a wizard with a fucking magic wand, picking off the chickens one by one. Hey, they gave me no choice. They were about to lay poisoned eggs. One bad apple. Anybody here know where the name Hollywood comes from? The Celtic Druids, they used to make their magic wands out of Hollywood. Give me a child till he's 7 years old, and I will show you the man. I think Aristotle said that, unless it was Dracula. I don't think it was Jesus or Wyatt Earp. I'm sure the Pope would go along with it. Who knows what's in that baptismal holy water? Something to wash the brain clean of any potential impure thoughts. Or if you're going to think them, you're going to feel bad about it. Anybody here ever had an impure thought and not felt bad about it? I had one the other day. I was driving up the ramp, 95, from New Haven. Turned the radio on, NPR. Faith Middleton, the food schmooze. I had this sudden irresistible urge to go fuck her in the ass and make her for once incapable of a civilized discussion. I've never met the woman. I'm sure she's a nice lady. It's that snake oil voice. Reminds me of my Auntie Bertha, the distant posh relative. Turns up on your doorstep every now and then to check up on her poor relations and share with them the richness of her life. Such over-hearty positivity, such over-eager, stiff upper-lipped willingness to muck in with the dirty dishes and show us what a great adventure we're really having, what a miracle life is. Plates, clean plates, leftover food down, drain. Oh, you don't have a disposable sugar, eh? Sorry about that. We may have to call a plumber. Bubbles! Did I tell you the first time I ever burst a bubble? And nobody wants to tell her to fuck off because they think she might leave them something in her will. Of course, eventually she does fuck off, goes back to a cozy little cottage by the seaside, spends most of her time dining with friends on fine wine and imported Chinese oysters, watching PBS, reading the Times, chain smoking and playing online poker. You either believe it or you don't. I'm projecting my reality. So many realities in this world. Is it any wonder so many fucking projectiles are landing on top of them? Fortunately or otherwise, my impure urge petered out as soon as I hit the Long Wharf gridlock and the news came on the radio. American drone strikes in Syria. Massive earthquake in Nepal. Tensions in the Middle East. More tensions in the Middle East. Riots in Baltimore. Murder, suicide in Bridgeport. And I knew I was back in the real world, fucking terrified of getting sideswiped or bending somebody's back bumper, having to forfeit me deductible. Have you never listened to the news and thought, you don't really live in the fucking real world? If you're not in a war zone or on Wall Street checking out the Dow Jones average, you're just living in a fucking dream world. Except when you're suffering, pain can be a good reality check and definitely stop you worrying about minding other people's business. Otherwise, if you're not a Marine or a Wall Street banker, it can be a handicap in the real world. Not being a patriot can be a fucking death sentence. Or at best, a career breaker. Ask any politician or anybody else who likes to win all their prizes in the public sector. I know I fucked up, but I really do love my country. Hey, define your fucking terms. Take responsibility for these words you're tossing around like bacon bits at a Jewish wedding. Do you love a country that was built by fucking gangsters, ex-bootleggers, slave traffickers, religious fanatics, ruthless robber barons, power-hungry, money-grubbing bankers, genocidal maniacs, psychotic, hypocritical destroyers of innocence? Or do you love that place you were born and raised, that gave you rock and roll and rhythm and blues and jazz and Mickey Mouse and Marilyn Monroe and so many dreams to dream and so many Mars bars to eat while you were fucking dreaming them, so much childhood innocence allowed to play around with itself, so many treats and free gifts and prizes to win, and so much promise of more to come if you just play your cards right, follow all the rules, and love your country. Even when you're not exactly sure who the fuck is running your country. May not be Americans, maybe the fucking Arabs or the Chinese or the fucking aliens. Even wild man Charlie Sheen, I saw him on YouTube on a late night talk show, feels a need to preface his conspiratorial theorizings with "I love my country." But Jesse Ventura, ex-Navy SEAL, wrestler, governor, now arch conspiracy theorist, feels bound to wrap his doubts and questionings in patriotic duty because he really loves his country. He doesn't even live in his fucking country. He lives in Mexico, Costa Rica, or something. What, they're so afraid of getting beheaded for treachery? Getting kind of crucified for heresy? Didn't that all go out with Jesus and the witch hunts and the Spanish Inquisition? The Age of Enlightenment, Noam Chomsky, cable TV? You know, the week after, can't take it anymore? The week after 9/11, the week after 9/11, I went to this roundtable discussion. I think it was at the People's Center in New Haven. It was facilitated by this guy, Scott Harris, who hosts a local alternative political radio show on local radio WPKN. Seemed like a nice guy, obviously smart, apparently heartfelt. At the moment, a little heartbroken. Everybody was still in shock that war could have hit so close to home, not 60, 70 miles away. People were still clearing up the bodies and the debris from ground zero. The whole country mourning for the victims and praying for the survivors and the first responders, even as the government was already preparing for military retaliation and voting on the Patriot Act. In this room full of pacifists and civil libertarians, how to respond? I mean, they could sympathize with lots of causes, but there was simply no excuse for the mass slaughter of innocent civilians. Nobody disputed the official story. We'd all seen the evidence with our own eyes. It wasn't much of a thoughtful discussion, and any flowing dialogue choked up with emotionalism, because some of these guys knew people who'd been killed that morning. I didn't say much, I listened, but at one point I felt the need to say something. So I asked the question, how much did they think Americans were prepared to give up at their way of life, their standard of living, which is obviously based on a war economy and imperialist exploitation of other people's resources? And should we really be so surprised that some people took violent exception to this? And are we really any more innocent? A lot of people getting exploited and killed collaterally or otherwise over there by the American military. It didn't go down too good. After that, I was practically ignored. It was received more as a comment than a question. After that, I was practically ignored. I obviously didn't understand. I was obviously English. It wasn't my country that had been invaded. I couldn't possibly fathom the depth of their trauma. And if I didn't like it, I should just go home. But this was my home. I'd already been living here for quite a while now. This was where I lived, for better or worse, whether I liked it or not, by choice, I guess. Anybody here who doesn't believe they belong on the planet Earth? The Earth is their home. They're simply part of its nature. Anybody here believe they belong on another planet? Anybody here believe they come from another planet? Anybody here want to fly off into outer space? Can anybody here tell me the real difference between outer space, cyberspace, and this fucking space? Hands up, anybody who believes that virtual reality is virtually taking over the world and they can virtually prove it? Hands up, anybody who believes the cost of living is getting too expensive? Poverty should be subsidized by the state. Hands up, anybody who believes poverty is already being subsidized by the state. Somebody has to clean up the kitty litter. Hands up, anybody here who wish they could afford a more expensive haircut. Hands up, anybody here who's ever walked into Walmart and thought, hey, it doesn't get any fucking cheaper than this. I've never been much of a flag-waving patriot. Even as a kid, surrounded by the evidence of so much poverty and deprivation, I was always amazed how many of my neighbors seemed to delight in watching privilege parade itself around on TV, everybody waving their little frames. God save the Queen. Am I the Queen? The Queen inspired nothing in me but bewildered fascination. How she got to be Queen in the fucking first place. I'd read the history books, I knew the chronicles of lineage, but the actual origins always seemed to melt into some mist of violence and intrigue. Whoever had the biggest bunker and was prepared to wield it most ruthlessly. But if they didn't want to beat the shit out of everybody, because they could come in useful, they'd always recruit some intriguing Svengali with his magic wand to convince everybody it was all for their own good, and that big bunker was a definite sign from God. By the time I was a teenager, I was convinced I couldn't fight for my country. I didn't think of it as cowardice. I thought of it as intelligence. I'd fight for my life. I might fight for somebody getting intact in front of me, but I couldn't imagine fighting for my country because I wasn't exactly sure what my country was, where my country was, somewhere in the fucking country. So many of my countrymen and women seem to be living in a different fucking country altogether, in a different world, the royal family on a different planet. I just couldn't understand how any self-respecting man or woman who graduated high school would bow or curtsy to this woman they'd never met before, who looked to me like some cut-price pantomime dame featuring as a guest at a local church hall social, except that her jewels were real, a sure sign she had some very big bonkers to work with. Though never being a connoisseur of jewelry, this meant very little to me till I realized where them jewels probably came from. Has anybody here ever worked down a fucking diamond mine on pain of death or whiplash or starvation or homelessness? I went down a coal mine once, a local coal mine on a school trip, now disused, turned into a museum. There's a big picture of the fucking Queen at the pit head before you entered the cage to get shafted. And after seeing the conditions some of these guys had to work in, still did a couple of miles down the road, my Uncle Jeff, nobody could ever convince me that slavery had been abolished. The illusions of freedom had just got more sophisticated. The change turned up in a little pay packet on Friday afternoon. Enough to keep you in bread and jam and baked beans and running water. Football game on Saturday afternoon, getting drunk with your mates down the pub Saturday night, church or TV on Sunday, choose your opiates, mix and match, lots and lots and lots of weekend light entertainment, bread and circuses, bring on the clowns. First we must teach them how to laugh before they go back down the fucking pit on Monday morning to serve God, Queen and country with a bad back, black lung, hopefully a disability pension, but more likely than not, an early death. Asked me Uncle Jeff's ghost, 53 years old he was when he died, me granddad, 55. Somebody told me once that the Queen was the richest woman in the world. And they told me in a way they expected me to feel proud because I was English, she was English, at least she spoke English on television, pride, wealth and pomp by proxy. It's a trickle-down theory. You just got to keep sucking it up on the end of that drain pipe. Or picking your nose out in your 3-foot-high underground cubicle. It's just the way it is. If you don't like it, fuck. If you don't like it, go live in a different country. So I did. Shut the fuck up. So I did. I no longer had to help. We're going to do another one. I no longer had to help God save the Queen. I had to help God bless America. God seems to work in very fragmented ways. He's never quite sure whose side he's on and what his real name is. Allah, Yahweh, mein Gott, mon Dieu, vive la Republique, death to the Queen, save the Queen, fuck the Republic. Sometimes you just have to decide for him. Hey, we're the good guys. Here's my card. You can frame it in the heavens if you like. Give me monarchy or death. Didn't have much of a bumper-sticking bounce to it. So I chose liberty. It sounded like I could pretty much do whatever I like. I didn't think it through. It meant everybody else could do pretty much whatever they liked too, including throw me in jail, deport me, or even assassinate me if I did something they really didn't like. Expose Victoria's secrets. Now there's a conspiracy might be worth looking into. There's no royalty in America. Everything is up for grabs for whoever's got the most sauté testicles to take it. These are the kings and queens of America. That's a commercial for Chrysler. I paraphrase. It's also a definition of barbarism. I think the wizards in the fucking henhouse are dressed up as the great liberator, freeing your conscience to obliterate itself in tax-deductible charity donations. Buy a goat and save a poor third world bugger. Buy two, get one free. You can share that with fucking Faith Middleton over some fine wine. Yeah? I'm all right, Jack. Shame about Jill. She should have worn a helmet. Some people are just bad losers. Freedom is not free. You're still in a dump, either a kingdom or a queendom or a freedom. Somebody still has to dominate. The ones on top of the pyramid, the ones buying the uniforms and making payroll. The ones who so ingeniously redefined capitalism as democracy may as well define your front lawn as a jungle, because there's some creepy crawlies living in there. Somebody has to make the rules and regulations, otherwise civility would collapse into unnatural chaos, and we'd all be at the mercy of nature's dominion. Because you don't think nature has its rules and regulations, parameters, and life and death imperatives? Tell that to the fucking nomads. Go live in the middle of the desert. Nature will definitely give you death before it'll give you liberty. You think this isn't the Garden of Eden? Try planting a tree in the fucking Sahara. Hey, if we can land men on the moon, anything's possible, except that it was filmed by Stanley Kubrick in a studio in London. That's just fucking silly. The parameters of impossibility have also been framed. If we can convince everybody they can hold the whole world in the palm of their hand and troll through it whenever they like, so they'll know exactly where they are even if they're not there yet. Every nook and cranny, everything you need to know about this world. And if you scroll down far enough, you're bound to come to the truth. Fuck, it's classified. Still, there's always late now. Shit, my Apple's crashed. I need to update my original sin. Where's the nearest store? I may have to take a cab, otherwise I might miss the last episode of fucking Mad Men. It's just one fucking problem after another. There's always going to be problems. So long as you're here, you're going to have problems. You think living in space, you won't have any fucking problems? You'll still be here even if you're there, because you can't be here and there at the same time. But if you're there, you won't be here anyway. So what's your fucking problem? It's one definition of being alive. Problem, reaction, solution. It's also the Machiavellian credo of the Illuminati Zionist protocols, except they want to create the problems, provoke the reactions, and provide the solution. A one world government. They came for the Jews. They came for the Canaanites. They came for the Assyrians. They came for the Maoris, the Aborigines, the Native Americans. They came for the Armenians, the Bosnians, the Rwandans. Now they're coming for everybody at the same fucking time. One-stop global shopping. And is this what we want? And do we really have a fucking choice? Don't like it? Move to another world. It's like musical chairs. When the music stops, you grab the nearest chair. But there's always going to be one chair missing, so somebody's always going to be eliminated till eventually everybody's been eliminated and there's only one chair left for the winner. Hey, you can call me Steely Dan on account of my supernatural bonker. Is it significant that all the grabbing is being done when the music stops and all the chairs keep disappearing while the music's playing? Without music, life would be a mistake, said Nietzsche. He also said God is dead. Maybe he committed suicide because somebody kept stopping him playing his fucking music. Opus interruptus. I've got nothing against rules and regulations so long as everybody's following similar rules and regulations. I've got nothing against improving one's lot in life, but where the fuck do you draw the line, and what some people are prepared to do to improve their allotment so much bigger than everybody else? I've got nothing against personal ambition. I'm not a communist. I'm not a Maoist. I'm not a dogmatist. You either fucking believe it or you don't. I'm not even an atheist. I'm certainly not a pugilist or a terrorist. I don't want to be terrified. Why the fuck would I want to terrify anybody else? I've got nothing against winning and losing, winners and losers, as long as you feel like you're in a fair game. It's a genuine thrill and inspiration to watch somebody doing something that they're really good at doing. Especially when you realize they're doing it because they're really good at doing it. And any prizes they win is just dollops of whipped cream on the cake. They love what they're doing. It's the ones who hate what they're doing you got to fucking worry about. The ones who are doing what they're doing on pain of death or whiplash or starvation or homelessness or shame or guilt or fear of abject fucking failure. They're the ones can curdle sour on a bad hair day, turn very pissed off and violent. And there's an untotalitarian, untiptoeing recipe for a local psychotic episode or a leap into the fucking Grand Canyon. Freedom may not be free, but if it's being subsidized by somebody else's enslavement, the word is just liberating its own diabolical perversity. The Liberty Bell's definitely fucking cracked. Demons have seeped into the molten metal, and any bells being recast now are definitely peeling out of tune. If music be the food of love, play on. Just not on them fucking cracked bells is giving me a fucking headache. Maybe we really are gorging on too many Mars bars, too much cotton candy under these faux golden arches, being serenaded by so much can crackling. Is it any wonder we've mixed up love with artificial sweetener? Something you buy in Stop and Shop and Walmart's. It'll turn up on the morning mail. You can frame it on your mantelpiece. I am loved. If somebody tries to sell you something made with love, I think they're confusing love with care at best, trying to give it some etymological uplift it doesn't really fucking need. If everybody just cared for everything and everybody, the world would be careful enough, and I'll take love whenever it happens, like a chance in a million. Its magic is of the effortless, that molecular melting into this free-floating, deeply embracing, all-pervading, unconditional innocence of well-being that would never dream of hurting, deceiving, or manipulating anybody. And if you felt that even fucking once, how can you possibly hate anybody? Hallmark is done for love. What collateral damage is done for freedom made it terrifyingly suspect. At best, a substitute for nostalgia or sentimentality. At worst, a prerequisite duality for justifying hate. If I don't hate somebody, how can I really love somebody? As soon as you start including hate in your definition of love, you've really split your frenia schizoid. And hell, any holiness you feel is just fit for dumping all the fucking garbage in. I don't hate anybody. There's a few people I don't want to be around, but I suspect the feeling's mutual. Avoid where possible. Has anybody here ever met an evil person in the flesh? Not just somebody who's fucked up, schizophrenic, lost, bewildered, floundering around, or so fucking sick to death of being hurt, deceived, and manipulated, they're willing to unsell their life for broke and take anybody down with them who happens to be around at the time. And if we need to be crucified to bring us back into the real world, I'm sure they'll be the ones doing the crucifying, but I very much doubt they'll be the ones who put us on trial in the fucking first place. Now I am starting to sound like Jesus before he became a Christian. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they don't know. It was classified. Yeah. So do with me what you will, what you must. Do your worst. I will turn the other cheek, the one with the Rosicrucians on. Bring it on, motherfuckers. I won't lift a fucking finger to help you. Stop you. Shit, I just did. Maybe that's why I need to be crucified. I made a very bad gesture. You know, sometimes I feel like the only religion I can really believe in is this helplessly impossible willingness to crucify my own psyche into some artsy peephole through which I can see the lovely light of innocence at the end of the tunnel. The rest, just fucking showbiz, cutthroat or otherwise, including the fucking 6 o'clock news. I went to see this Native American guy give a talk once in New Haven. Seemed like a nice guy, obviously smart, apparently heartfelt. Casual suit, no tie, ponytail. And he talked about rampant alcoholism on the reservations and should he feel ashamed and embarrassed by what his people had become. But they weren't his people, he said. They were really the white guys reincarnated as drunken Indians. Temporary karmic payback for how they'd once treated his people. We all have our lessons to learn. In the end, the only thing that matters is how our spirit resonates in eternity. War, disease, injustice, temporary phenomena. Only eternity is forever. So if you don't want to come back, so we need to keep the faith. And if you don't want to return back as a drunken Indian, don't fuck with the natives. You know, I'd love to believe everybody's basically good. Whoever's running this country, any other fucking country, they're just doing their best, trying to clear up all the roadblocks so we can freewheel down the highway of life, simply grateful for what we have and for what we've been given, this opportunity for life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. The ability to laugh, the capacity to be moved to tears, so long as it's not just because somebody keeps poking us in the ribs with a very sharp stick and forcing us to see this world through impersonally hostile eyes, conspiring to convince us it's a ripped open Pandora's plague-ridden box riddled with overarching egos and psychotic power plays. And it's only for the brave, and if you don't want to play along, you must be a bit of a fucking wimp. And at some point you will be due for some terrifying comeuppance that you will not be prepared for. And the older I get, the more imminent it seems, and the more urgent it becomes to convince myself that's not the fucking real world. It's a projection of some alien matrix designed to split level my consciousness schizophrenic and render me susceptible to all manner of mental and martial manipulations. But if I just stick to me water pistols, practice me Tai Chi, roll with the blows, the final punch will simply pass straight through me, dissolve into Hollywood dross and get sucked into the black hole of oblivion along with all the other fucking garbage, leaving I and all the other I and I's, innocently, peacefully playing around forever in some molecular game of fucking ping pong, which needs to get nowhere but where it already is, transcending everything, so I can suffer anything, knowing that eventually there is a light at the end of this particular tunnel I so egotistically like to call myself. And there are no aliens in eternity, malevolent or otherwise. No space but space itself. No separation, just the occasional temporary fracture. But timelessness heals all. Omi takwi yasin, all my relatives. I know the promise of youth, all my ancestors. Teach me the promise of getting old, because I'm still working on that fucking one. O kini kosoa, preserve the plea and provoke the pity in peace, and it will always be a good day to live and a good day to die. There was a frog once lived in a well, and this well was the whole world to this frog. He knew where it began and he knew where it ended. Then one day this frog who lived next to the ocean hopped up for a visit, and the well frog asked the ocean frog, how big is the ocean? And the ocean frog said, well, it's a lot bigger than this well. Well, said the well frog, this I have to see for myself. So the next day they hopped off together to visit the ocean. And sure enough, it was much, 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 much bigger than the well frog had ever dreamed of or imagined. It seemed to have no beginning and no ending, and it blew his mind, and his head exploded. And that's one way to clear up any misunderstanding. You either believe it or you don't. Choose your own fairy tale. Thanks for listening to mine.
Oh my, fantastic.
Fuck it.
Oh my God. This was my second round, and it was even